welcome back to the show. The show is Your World, and today we're coming to you from the Giraffe Center right here in Nairobi. And on the first part of the show, we focus on endangered animals and what we need to do, not only just pointing fingers at Gava and say, oh, Gava this, Gava that. What is it that we can do collectively to protect our endangered species? Not just endangered, but really protect our wildlife. But even during the conversation, a topic on water. You know, we talked so much about water and how it is important for not only, you know, us humans, for survival, but also for the wildlife. Cases of climate change and also human-wildlife conflict, of course, you know, most of the time being brought about by lack of resources and water, and pasture being one of them. So, on this hour of the conversation, we want to talk about climate change and its impact on water, and water as a resource, not just a commodity. And that is what we want to focus on the next few minutes right here of Your World. And Mukali, do you have anything to say on the first part? Let's just dive into it.
I have lunch, and we have so many T-shirts to make.
Let me tell you.
We have slogans. It was such a powerful conversation.
It
I
really
love that I was a part of it, and that I am sure that this opens up to so many other conversations.
Yes.
And I also love the fact that whatever we're talking about in this last part of the show is quite interconnected with the first conversation.
Yes,
so that's very exciting.
Yes, and we're out in nature. So if you see the rain in Atupiga Pakidogo, don't you worry, okay? We're in nature. But really, to help us with the conversation, to drive the second part of the show, we have Levis Kavagi, who's a regional coordinator, ecosystems and biodiversity from UNEP. Thank you so much, Levis, for making the time for us. I'm pretty sure you were following the first part of the conversation. From a first, I'm pretty sure you have something to say still on the same, but we'll come back to you on that. And we also have Bosco Mwendwa, who's a programs coordinator, Israel Aid International Kenya. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you're Turkana mostly. How is it going over there?
We are doing well.
Yes.
Of course, we are not exempted from the effect of climate change.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion.
Absolutely. Levis, can we just start with water as a resource? Just understanding it as it is. Water as a resource, and how important, what is it that we need to be mindful about?
Thank you, Winnie. When we talk about water, the most common slogan is that water is life.
Yes.
And this slogan is not empty because it literally means without water, there will be no life.
There will be no survival. Yeah.
Nature, animals, human beings, plants in general depend on water for survival. And we know that even though we might have a lot of water, in terms of lakes, oceans, and other sources of water, the amount of water we have for potable use is actually limited.
Yeah.
So in many countries, they are facing water scarcity, and it's a question of nearing also on national security, peace, stability, livelihoods. The whole economy is actually dependent on water.
Yeah.
So when we talk about water resources management, it's a responsibility that all people, regardless of your level of interaction with water, level of responsibility in government or in schools or in community, you must actually make effort to work towards water resources management.
I see that. Yes. And Bosco, do you want to also chime in? And because, like I said, and also just speak on you know, the impact as compared to say what to Nairobi, because
it's different, really.
Right?
It is different from the culture to everything else.
Yes.
And that's the beauty about Kenya, that we are in the same country, but it's so
diverse.
So different.
Yes, but yes, go ahead, Bosco.
Definitely, the effect of water, water scarcity for that matter, is different. For example, in ASAL areas, the arid and semi-arid regions of this country, you find it is affecting the comprehensive or the holistic part of an individual, starting from their health, because lack of it then definitely leads to waterborne diseases. Looking also in terms of access to education. Today we do have children in Turkana who are not going to school because they have to go and look for water. Thirdly, we're looking at conflict oriented within our community. Why? Is because water is not as available. We have an issue around water scarcity, right? And so water is a crucial commodity, not only in other parts of the world, but specifically in ASAL area, which is a bedrock to other social economic development.
I like that.
Yeah.
And over the last, maybe you can just look at the impact of climate change, on water and what the status looks like, probably for the last maybe a decade or so. What has the status been? Where are we at when we talk about water scarcity, water status, and it being a resource? What's the status of this country as of today?
Yeah.
As mentioned, arid and semi-arid areas in Kenya constitute almost 70 to 80% of the land mass. And when we hear about aridity or semi-aridity, it means that availability of water itself is very low.
Yeah.
In these arid and semi-arid areas, most water sources tend to be underground water. But these underground water resources, they're not limitless. They're finite.
Yeah.
So it means we have to take care of the underground water as much as possible. Climate change has, for surface water, let me start with that. For surface water, climate change has impacted on surface water to a great extent. We find some of the sources are drying up, but we have also an increase in impacts of climate change. For example, flooding,
Yes.
which is associated with other disasters, but also with the erosion of soils, soil erosion, and therefore eroding the productivity of land, leading to land degradation. And therefore, the impact on food security, impact on other aspects of life follow.
Yeah.
Floods also come with challenges, as mentioned, on health. One of the diseases that emerges because of flooding is Rift Valley fever. And in arid areas who depend on pastoralism, Rift Valley fever starts with their cattle. So if they lose their cattle to Rift Valley fever, you can imagine after the floods, then the next cycle of livelihoods is affected. But Rift Valley fever also jumps to human beings. And it is fatal in some cases when it is not controlled. So you can see the whole issue of health and climate change, how they are interrelated. I could go on with other diseases, but I can just give that as an example. But on the flip side of floods is droughts. And we have seen in the past, Kenya has experienced the worst drought in 40 years, 2022-2023.
Yes.
Which shows that climate change is actually with us today. And with droughts, then the water resources, availability of water resources, especially surface water, is impacted. So it calls upon the country, and especially in arid and semi-arid areas, to look at how do we develop groundwater resources that could buffer the impact of climate change. But at the same time, we need to look at how do we build resilience in climate change, occurrence of climate change.
Yeah, because that will happen.
Yes, definitely. And for majority of Africa, we look at adaptation to climate change. And the adaptation we are looking at is the ecosystem-based adaptation to climate change. How do we make use of natural resources management to guard ourselves and build resilience to the impact of climate change going forward? And we have seen, if I may, that going for, from the studies we have conducted, for example, climate change has caused the levels of Lake Turkana, for example, to increase. And many other Rift Valley lakes are also on the increase. But a few years ago, actually, the reason why we were doing this study was to understand why are these lakes declining. So you can see, on one hand, we were worried about the decline in the lake volumes and river flows, and now we are worried about the increase in lake volumes and river flows.
Wow. Interesting. And also to tie into wildlife, like Levis rightly put, Kenya, we experienced the worst drought in over, 40 years?
40 years.
And we saw wildlife also, going into community land, and there was a lot of conflict because clearly there was no water and there was no pasture.
Absolutely.
So, and what I think in the Asal areas is even worse. It's even worse, right? And there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of fire fine. Adaptation is one of them, like
Yes.
Levis said. But even other than that, what is it that we can do, that communities can do? Because remember in the first part of the conversation, it emerged that communities have the solutions.
Absolutely.
Right? And you work directly with the communities.
Yes.
So what is it that can be done? What is it that is being done?
Yes.
At least to curb, the impact of climate change,
Absolutely.
especially on water resources. Yeah.
Absolutely. At Israel, we do implement community-centered approach, where we say that the community should be at the center of any solution that is being implemented within their area,
Okay.
all the way from planning to implementing and absolutely to monitoring. So, for example, what we are doing in Kakuma is that we are implementing, or we are drilling boreholes, and then we form community water management committee, so that this community can be charged of maintaining of this water system, can be the one that are running the day-to-day operations of this water system.
Right.
But apart from that, we are taking it a notch higher, together with the county government, where we are saying, can we capacity build our community, especially looking at the vulnerable populations, especially women, people with disability. Can we capacity build them? So then they have the technical capacity, because as humanitarian actors, we shall not be there 24/7.
That's true.
But we need to build the capacity of the community, so that one, they are resilient enough, two, they are knowledgeable enough, three, they are able to apply the sustainable measures in connection to water resource management, so that 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, we should be able to see that water source functional. Because what is happening is that in our Asal region, previously we used to find drought reoccurring after 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
But right now the situation is different. We are seeing drought happening after 2 to 3 years. Then that calls for additional or reviewing our policy. Let's think about it. What is it that we can do better? What is it that we can do differently? And what we are saying that we have to make sure the community is at the center of the discussion, is at the center of implementation, is at the center of monitoring. Something else that we are doing is that we are saying that the local government is so important for any solution that is being outlined in their county. And what we are doing, for example, with Israel, we are capacity building. Levis spoke about hydrogeological or groundwater as the only available water in Asal region. What we're doing as Israel, we are studying the area. So then we are able to map out potential drilling points, not only for us to support the community, but for other humanitarian actors. Once they come to us to the place, they already have something they can work with, right? But again, we are not only doing that, but again, we are also capacity building. Right?
Yeah.
The local government, so that then they are able to know what are the effective techniques to groundwater mapping. Because again, for the longest time, we've been using vertical electrical sounding, VES, which is not as effective and as applicable, especially in Asal area, where they have complex geological formation.
I see. Nimekwama hapo kwa vertical, but
Kweli, hata mimi niko, but then alikuwa na flow. I like that you brought out community and you brought out education, capacity building and all of that. And just like the question we had in the earlier conversation is, what are we doing? How, in terms of creating this awareness, of imparting knowledge and education to the communities? Because we've all agreed, hapo ndio kuna solutions.
Yes.
But they need to know how to, when it rains, what do we do? When it's a drought, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we save? How do we conserve? And all of that. So how's that going?
Of course.
Is it in just one part and it's all over? Sisi watu wa Ukambani.
I was about to say, Bukali, huko kwenye Masaku.
Sisi watu wa Makueni. Tena Masaku ni hapa. Watu wa Makueni kule wote. We'd like to know. Huko. Anyway, continue.
Thank you so much. Just to mention, I also come from Matiliku.
Ango, have you helped our community?
So we are getting the successful models, and it's our intention to replicate this model in other parts of the country as Israel. That is one of our initiative. But just to come back to your question, what we are doing is that we are using especially schools as an entry point. We're saying, can we work with children? Can we work with them, especially within the framework of a school club, right? So that then we are able to empower, we're able to sensitize on the importance of water, right? And how can we conserve the little that we do have? We have said that we have finite. And so the discussion should have how best can we make use of the little that we do have. And how best, what are the adaptive solutions? Levis has spoke of adaptive solutions, right? Can we say that every child should plant one tree?
Yeah.
right? And those are part of the initiatives that we are doing,
Yeah.
for example, in Turkana, right? But again, we are going also into the community and having conversation with our community and saying that at the backyard of your household, in that manyata, can you have a small kitchen garden, right? So that grey water, you can say, you can use it to plant some vegetables. Because one of the challenge that we do have with drought is malnutrition.
Yes, the children.
Right? In Asal region, we do have high global acute malnutrition. The gum rates are beyond the threshold, right? And so we need to have a discussion. How can we supplement our feeding?
Yeah, and
our
remember the first part of the conversation, we said children. Children are the best teachers.
Yes, they
You teach them
are.
something and they will actually
They will
make
go
sure that
teach
they
others
implement
and they will
that.
remember.
Yeah, and even as we talk about what communities are doing, how can we empower communities? Can we understand where we are at in terms of the challenges? Because when we're talking about water, management and sustainability, clearly the reason why we're having this conversation is because kuna kashida mahali. There's something that is making us really talk about this. So what are the challenges from where you sit as UNEP? And then we'll talk about the collaboration and partnerships, to help with that as well.
Thank you, Whitney. Just to complement the response on Makueni, actually Israel as a pilot project, I forgot the name of the place. There used to be a big plantation area with a big dammed area and a lot of water.
Yes.
But they were diesel engines that were used to pump water.
Okay.
And then over time they broke down. So what Israel has done with some collaborations was to come in with solar systems, so that they reduce the operational costs of pumping the water and then redistributing this water, and then showing how this water can be used efficiently. Because in many cases, and one of the challenges in water resources management is how much water do we use? Agriculture tends to use 70 to 80% of water, plus or minus, given the context. And if you're using water for irrigation, what is the system that you're using water for?
Okay.
Some systems are so much water intensive, and therefore you don't get efficiency.
All right.
So there are some efficient technologies that we could apply to reduce the amount of water that we use for agriculture.
Okay.
And if we do this, then we make water available for other sectors. What's in water resources management we call demand management. So agriculture demands a lot of water, but what can we do to reduce the amount of water that they use while increasing, in some cases, the potential yield, if it is in crop or animal production?
I see.
So water efficiency is one of the key challenges that we are facing.
All right.
But now using technology, using community-based solutions, like it was mentioned, nature-based solutions.
Yes.
We talk about sand damming as one of the potential solutions, because the water seeps down into the ground and it is covered by sand. And because it is covered by sand, and in arid areas, the rate of evaporation is quite intense.
Yes.
So the sand above the water reduces evaporation, while underneath you have even millions of liters that you have collected and can be in the gap between the first rain season and the next rain season. This is one of the nature-based solutions which the communities actually have used for many years. If you go,
we use it.
Yes,
That's how we get our water.
yes.
Even for farming, we'll just go by the riverbed and dig up, dig up and protect it.
Yes.
And then it will go down by the time you come the next day. Then you just scoop a bit of sand.
I'm trying to think what we used to do best watch when I was still a child. But I was still a child. I wouldn't.
So some of these are the challenges, but going hand in hand with the solutions,
Solution
because
at the
we are
same
now
time.
talking to the communities. What did you do? So we
Yeah.
are starting at a point of equal knowledge and then progressing to new areas.
Yeah.
But one of the other challenges is we have very good policies. We have very good strategies. We have very good action plans.
Yes.
But turning this into implementation, this is where there is a problem.
I know. Good policies.
So we need-
where the implementation at.
Exactly. So we need an intervention that bridges the gap between policy and implementation. But when talking about policy, the process of policy making needs also to be informed by science. In some instances, we make policies without the hard science. What do we know? What is the science telling us?
Yes.
Then we use that as evidence to make a policy. What do we know? And when we talk about science, we're not talking about physics, chemistry, and bio. We're talking about science also that is based in indigenous knowledges.
Yes.
The ways and practices of local peoples. How do we incorporate this into policy making?
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so these are some of the challenges that we face. And then the last one is on sustainability. In many cases, we go through program or project-based support to countries, or countries use those as modes of intervention. But after the 5 years or after the 10 years of the program, what remains behind has also been a challenge.
Okay.
So making sure that these development efforts are sustainable is also one of the areas where we have challenges. And that's why working with the national government, working with the county government for the case of Kenya, but also working with the communities. Tends to build towards the sustainability. And now that you talked about partnerships, we also want to talk between partners.
Yes.
In many cases, and this could be true in many places, you find that one organization comes and drills a borehole. The borehole fails.
Yes. Then
another one comes and builds it in another place. That is one instance. Another instance is that because water is closely related to conflicts, you may be providing what you think is a solution, but you are actually exacerbating the conflict, because now all the communities will congregate around the water.
And even wildlife,
wildlife,
because that's business, right?
There is conflict between people, but there's also conflict between humans and wildlife. But there's another silent conflict between nature and the rest. So in that instance, we need to talk between partners, to talk to the local communities who understand their needs.
Yes.
So that when we are providing a solution, we are not adding to the problems that they face.
I see. And even from the first part of the conversation, remember public awareness so that people know how to, say, for example, with wildlife, an elephant passes, instead of doing this, please do that, so that we reduce the conflict.
We need all of that.
Yes.
And I see the community is at the heart of everything when it comes to our environment. And I'm sure we've talked about many things that we've done wrong, the government, policies, but are there instances or sectors that we've won? We've done something. We've had milestones over the years that we can celebrate today and be like, it's not all grey. We've made strides, and this is what the strides look like.
Definitely we have. Levisa spoke about policies.
Yes.
I think in terms of right policies, we have made some significant steps. But before getting into your question, I just want to add one approach that has really been something that we've been able to see impact, especially in our implementation. We do implement integration approaches, because we're saying that scarcity to water is not only in relation to thirstiness, for example, right? Has interconnection with health, has interconnection with protection issues. GBV cases are on the rise. Why? Is because you do not have water, right? Education is not accessible, right? And so, for example, what we are doing, implementing a community empowerment program to wash, protection, and health, whereby we are saying that we understand that community will be displaced. They'll move from one village to the next, but can we take this hospital to where they're moving? So that the children themselves can still access can still access health services. The immunization schedule cannot be interrupted with, right? At the same time, we are saying that, is it possible that we can work? Yes, you are not going to school. Yes, GBV cases on the rise affected our young girls. Can we work with them? And so, for example, what we as Israel we have done, we have set up adolescent-friendly space. So then we can work with the teenage mothers. We can say that life should not come to an end. This has happened. Of course, the genesis of this problem was water, right? But has got interlinked issues, right? So can we work with you so that then we say, is it possible you can diversify your livelihood opportunities? You do not need to depend on climate-oriented livelihood opportunity, of which majority or most of them depend on pastoralism, right? And so is it possible we capacity build in aspect around tailoring, for example.
All right.
Is it possible that we can equip you with skills so that you can bake?
Yeah.
Is it possible that we can equip you with skills so that you can start a shop and sell to your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Which is more of a resilient livelihood opportunity rather than those which are climate sensitive livelihood opportunity, be it agriculture or pastoralism.
That's powerful right there.
Wait, let
Yeah.
me tell you. And
Yeah.
let us ask this question. How much water do you use? Let me tell you, my mind is still...
I saw you went up.
Yeah, I'm like,
Where are
really?
you? Where
How
are you?
much? How much do you use? But also to the question that we kindly ask. So, are there things that we have done right, or are there things that we should do to at least right this wrong? And also, again, adaptation, I know is what, is what we're
Great
talking
out,
about.
yeah.
But yes, but are there things that we have done right, and from where you stand as UNEP? Because there's this saying that UNEP does, yeah? It's leave no one behind, right? Leave no one
Yeah.
behind. So are there things that we have done right in the leaving no one behind?
I think in the leaving no one behind,
Yeah.
and basically, why are we in Turkana?
Yes.
And why are we in Makueni? Why are we in those areas?
That's
that
all
are,
areas, yeah.
Kilifi. This, if you look at the level of poverty in the country, Turkana and the arid areas, and Kilifi and some coastal areas, they are actually at the bottom.
All right.
So leaving no one behind means we also need to hold these counties and bring them to a level that
Okay.
they can start matching with the other counties.
All right.
But also with the groups, the youth, the women that are
Yes, the young people.
engaged in various livelihoods. How do we work with those groups to ensure that we bring them not at par initially, but towards coming at par with the other development?
Okay.
It's a human rights-based development approach.
All right.
So whose rights have been left behind?
Okay.
So you start by asking yourself that question, and then working with those groups so that they can also realize the aspiration towards sustainable development.
Okay.
And there are many successes. I don't want us to look at a doomsday messaging.
Yes.
There are quite a number of success stories, and that's why replicating these success stories one village at a time,
Yes.
or one county at a time, or one country at a time, from a UNEP perspective, is very important.
I see.
So we're looking at lessons that we are learning, especially from nature-based solutions.
All right.
And how do we engage with the communities as the lead?
Okay.
They are not observers of development, but they are leading their transformation into sustainable development.
I see.
So leaving no one behind is a very critical programming approach of the UN. As I mentioned, based on human rights-based approach
All right.
that looks at those that are disadvantaged in society. When you look at some of the solutions that we are providing, as I mentioned, water efficiency,
Yes.
but also look at specifically to Turkana. There are communities that are not used to taking vegetables. How do we enhance their nutritional security
Yes.
using water
Yes.
as a resource?
Yeah.
And that's why I like the point that water is not for the
It's
thirst.
not for the thirst. It's true.
Water is much broader than that. And, but the thing that clicks in people's mind, you talk about water, is about where's the potable water. So when you look at an intervention like that in Turkana, what we're working together with Israel and JICA and FAO, we are looking at introducing children to vegetable-based nutrition
Yes.
for nutrients,
Okay.
to supplement their micronutrients, using an innovative lunch system where we elevate a tank. From a borehole, we have a tank. Elevated hand pump is used for that. And then it does a micro garden at a school level. And then the school children learn how to grow vegetables. But they don't just learn how to grow vegetables, they use those vegetables in their lunches.
Okay.
So in the gideri.
Yes.
So when you serve them in gideri, you also serve on the side a bit of
Smart.
vegetables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we encourage the children, when they go home, to just dig a hole.
All right.
maybe 3 feet by 3 feet. Put manure inside from the kettle they have, and then mix it up and plant 6 to 8 plants of cowpeas.
Yes.
And gradually, the household level will pluck a few leaves over time
Yes.
until they get used to a vegetable-based diet.
Interesting. Okay. That they're okay.
That we need to amplify.
Okay.
And replicate in many areas.
In many areas.
Maybe just to add.
Yes.
Maybe just to add in terms of what are the successes. And looking at the National Climate Change Plan, it has cascaded the implementation of that plan to the world level. Right? And so today, at a world level, community are able to say, is it for us, our adaptive strategy will be a sandam, for example.
Okay.
Right? For us, adaptive strategy will be planting of trees.
All right.
Right? And what we are doing as Israel Aid is working with these technical working groups at that world level. So then we're able to capacity build them in terms of functionality and in terms of decision making and making decisions that are context appropriate within their climatic condition. Because again, when you're looking at adaptive policy, you have to appreciate the climate that you're operating from. Right? And so I think that is a progress that we have made as a country, but still there's a need.
There's so much.
There's a need for more collaboration.
All
There's a need for a lot of partnership, right? So that then we do not operate in silos in terms of solutions, but still there's a need for integration. Because again, these challenges are interlinked.
I see.
Mimi nakwambia hapa tunahitaji muda.
I know.
It's so informative, and some of the things that are being said are probably things that we've probably assumed they're very basic. Kama, you don't think about them, you just live your life ignorantly. But once we are equipped with this knowledge, then a lot can change.
Yeah, I see that. So then, as we bring this to a close, because on the first part we talked about endangered species and how climate change is also impacting on that, and now we're focusing on water because, like we said, there is no life without water. And this is both on wildlife and even domestic animal to us human biodiversity, really, in general. So what does the future look like then when we're talking about water sustainability? And if you could do that in like 25 seconds each,
I'll be counting.
We'll be counting. Do you understand? Bosco, that will close with Levis in terms of what the future looks like when we're talking about climate change and water, management, systems and sustainability part of the same. Adaptation, it's a lot.
It's a lot. Definitely. I think at the center of it is that climate change and the impact are here with us. Right? And so we just need to be adaptive and resilient. And so the first thing first is that, is it possible we build a resilient community? Right? Is it possible that we are able to decrease, for example, the emission of greenhouse gases that are happening within our nation? Right? And so the future going forward, as the low-hanging fruits for us is working with the community to ensure that they are resilient so that then they are able to take responsibility of the available resources within their community.
All right, 25 seconds, done. Levis, your turn.
I appreciate climate change, but for us, we also talk about the 3 planetary crises. They are interconnected: climate change, the loss of nature, and pollution. If we talk about water resources management, we could be having water, but the water gets polluted. And if it gets polluted, then it's not available for use, or it has to take a lot of investment to make it useful for plants and animal use. But the future is bright. I would conclude by saying that there are many examples that have succeeded. There are many communities that have a lot of knowledge to share. Policies are there, and we have a lot of technologies also, especially with innovation and the youth coming up with innovative ideas around technology. Technology is also supporting how we could manage water resources more effectively.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Hey, this was it.
They do. Yeah. At the heart of it all, for me, I think community, and I love that the conversation is not about them being bystanders of what is being done about their life.
Yes.
It's like, you're going to be a part of this. We're going to do this because you are at the core of everything changing life, changing environment, our animals, and all of that.
Yeah, let me tell you, we're literally quite class because we have learned so much from wildlife to now understanding not only just the impact of climate change, but also how communities are important when we're talking about solutions, and even with the wildlife, as well, how communities are important in ensuring that we protect, our wildlife and nature and biodiversity. Let me tell you, it's a lot to do on Mindful Monday. Okay, so I hope that you've learned so much as well together with us right here on the show, and of course a special thanks to Levis Kavagi, who is the Regional Coordinator, Ecosystems and Biodiversity from UNEP, and Bosco Mwandwa, Programs Coordinator, Israel International Kenya. And also earlier on we had Emmanuel and we had Steve as well. So special thanks to all our guests today, and thank you for sticking with us until the end of the show. Pretty sure that you've learned a lot, all right? So keep the conversation going online, and that is NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on X, and tag me as well at Lubembe_Winnie and at It's Wikali Mary. All right. So goodbye. Have yourselves a lovely day. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Wikali.
Adios. Thanks, Giraffe Center, as well, for hosting us today.
Goodbye.
Loved it here.